What's nice? Yeah, what's happening? And the second was Data's language. Question.
Or as soon as we can make our finance.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, great. Perfect. Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
Platform for remote video and audio conferencing. This new application is free to the public. The general public is therefore able to join the meeting. Township's YouTube channel. Please continue to check the township website calendar for any updates related to Jen's website. Should be available on the township's website. Please be reminded that this meeting is being video and audio recorded and will be posted to the township's YouTube channel for viewing. The meeting will now proceed with the chairman calling the meeting to order and identifying all other members present in the meeting and those joining. Chairman, confirm those members joining by Zoom can be heard.
Good evening, everyone. This is the call to order the March 10th, 2026 meeting of the East Lampeter Township Planning Commission. Commission members are John Thompson to my far left, Jansen Herb, myself with Randy Patterson as chair, and Ryan Martin. We have Jacob Bowen and Leo Ovitz is our administrative assistant. The announcement says I'm going to identify everyone in the room. I am not. Those who make presentations will identify themselves for you if you're here as a guest. So we'll go over that. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I should mention that Sarah Ryder is our fifth member, but she is absent. You have received the minutes of our February 10th, 2026 meeting in the package you received by email and in front of you today. I did make some minor edits to those and sent them back out to everyone. Jacob was okay with the edits I made. So for a motion to accept the edited minutes unless there are other corrections to be made.
I didn't notice any other corrections. I would make a motion to accept the edited minutes as presented.
Second by Jansen Herb. First, I'm sorry. Second by Ryan Martin. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. We will move to old business. Our first item of old business is Land Development Plan 2025-05 for Cocalico Creek at 2331 Lincoln Highway East. If you could identify yourself and your representation of the applicant.
Sure. My name is Matthew Mack. I'm with Mack Engineering. I'm here for Cocalico Creek. I was here a couple months ago. I gave an overview of the project. Basically, general same project that was before.
I'll stop you. We have one new member since you were here. So if you could just give a summary, and we have guests in the room.
Yep, no problem. So Cocalico Creek, here is the old comedy club. Okay, up next to Texas Roadhouse and that whole development, there was an existing hotel and comedy club that has since been raised, knocked down, removed. We are now creating Cocalico Creek is next door, low 430. They are expanding up to this area. Majority of the site was existing impervious out there. We are actually reducing the stormwater and meeting the MPDS and township requirements. So it should get less leaving the site than what was there before. Last time we were here, we delayed working with the architect to actually get building plan layouts footprint to make sure everything that we're actually gonna get approved is what's actually getting built. That makes sense. Okay. We work closely with BMA, getting the letter. There's very, very few minor comments remaining. We have a few housekeeping items on the technical review for the conservation district. We worked with Charlie as a township that originally there was numerous amount of EDUs allocated. Many of them, so we'll actually be returning some of those EDUs back to the township. We have clean letters from the traffic consultant based upon the traffic stuff we did. So tonight I have two minor waivers. The one is just allow us to go preliminary final. And the other one is for us to allow you to utilize a smaller pipe band. 15 inches is the minimum requirement for areas where parking and truck traffic is. We have numerous amounts of seepage pits and infiltrators in this area. They have distribution pipes that are 8 inches in diameter, perforated. We don't need a 15-inch diameter perforated pipe. Okay. BMA supports those waivers. Large agenda tonight. Don't want to take too much of your time, but I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have for the project. But we work hard to get cleaned up. By the time we came back, there's very few.
So for the public's benefit, we have a letter from David Miller Associates, Township Engineers, to review land development plans dated February 24th, and that was the two waivers that gentleman was referring to. I do have a question. So in that letter, have you received approval from DEP yet?
No, I brought them there today. So we're in technical review. We have literally some
Financial security, David Miller has suggested additional improvements be added to that.
So today, we submitted to Jacob the updated cost estimate, signed and sealed, along with I brought updated plans that are highlighted with the items that are identified in David Miller's letter.
And the last one from me is, he mentions a sidewalk connection should be made from the proposed sidewalk along Lincoln Highway to the sidewalk providing access to the proposed building.
The updated plans have that.
And then you've seen the letter from the Lancaster County Planning Department.
Yeah.
It's dated August 6th, 2025. You have no issues meeting those conditions in that letter. Are there any other council or commission members, if they have any questions? The applicant. Are there any comments from the public on this plan? And I'll look for a motion from the commission to approve the recommendation to the tax and fee advisors. Plan 2025-05. For Calico Creek at 2331 Lincoln Highway. For the letter of 58.4 and the planning department letter of 6/2025.
Make a motion for plan number 2025-05. Make a motion to approve it subject to the requirement outlined in the DMA letter dated February 24th, 26th and August 6th of 25. Recognizing that many of those requirements in the DMA letter, it sounds like have already been addressed. But in recognition of that, I'll make a motion to approve pending those two.
Motion from John Thompson. Is there a second? A second from Jansen Hurd. Any final comment or discussion from the planning commission staff?
There was a Lancaster County review letter. That.
Sixth one? That is in motion.
Sorry, just making sure, yeah.
Staff? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Second item, of old business, which we began reviewing last month, is the 2026-02, which is the township zoning ordinance amendment. Prepared by Jacob Bowen, our director of planning. We began our review of this last month. We asked for some additional time to review it and some additional information that Jacob sent us by email. Jacob, is there anything that you want to pick out that you want to go over again?
I think you always received the Lancaster County comment. That was included in your packet. I did get those. I don't know if you guys have any questions from that comment letter.
I don't know if anybody else did. Plus, we have a little bit larger crowd, just a quick summary of why we're going through this process.
Absolutely. So there's a zoning ordinance amendment submitted from the township, where we are updating our current zoning ordinance, where we are correcting some inconsistencies, different spelling errors, and then also implementing some items from our previous housing needs study, that allow for increased density for housing in two of our zoning districts, our mixed use and our high density zoning district. And this is something that had kind of been in the works before I started here. Some of just different staff had submitted different comments, 2021. So this is kind of accumulation of those different changes. So the board is just looking to do the recommendation that this will go to actually a hearing April 6th for these amendments. So,
Thank you. We would note for the record that we have a letter of support from Chestnut Housing. Chad Martin is the executive director, encouraging the township to approve the amendments to really increase the flexibility of developing housing within the township to meet our housing study. We also have a letter from Upper Lake High Township Board of Supervisors concurring with the suggested amendments without any comment. Is there any questions or comments from anyone in the public? Comments from planning commission members? Hearing none, accept a motion to recommend to the Board of Supervisors the approval of the zoning ordinance amendments as presented.
I'll make a motion, to approve the, when do I say that? To approve, township zoning ordinance amendments as presented and prepared.
Motion from Jansen Hur, is there a second? Second from Ryan Martin. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, say aye. Any opposed? So moved. If John, thank you. So we will move on to. Our first item of new business is Plan 2025-28, presenting testament to the optimal density incentive overlay district. It's in the township's zoning ordinance, and they are looking to make a text amendment to that section of the ordinance. Keystone Custom Homes and Brookfield Development Corporation are the applicants for that zoning text amendment. Is there someone here to represent them? You could identify yourself, and I think what I would ask, and so the planning commission members have received a copy of the text amendment. They received a copy of the application. They received copies of comments from the Lancaster County Planning Department. So I think if you could, rather than reading the text amendment, if you could highlight the changes that you're seeking. And I did take the liberty of preparing something for the planning commission members that has the current language of the ordinance and then the requested language. We have that information to go through, but I think that would be the easiest way to go through the text. And then I have questions about its application.
Yes, thank you. Chris Arctic with RGS Associates. I'm joined tonight by Mickey Thompson. We have a project Lewis. What we're here tonight to, as you pointed out, is just to really walk you through the application for the text amendment that was submitted. And then hearing the direction from the planning commission, I think makes sense. What I can quickly do is just very brief background and history on the project, status of construction, talk a little bit about the conditional use that was part of the application, the reason for the text amendment, why we're here this evening, and then touch on that plan comparison to what was ultimately approved on the preliminary plan and what we're proposing now, and then talk a little bit about next steps in the application. So in terms of brief history, the project's about 50 acres. It is on the south side of Route 23, just east of Horning Road. It is in the R2 zone in the neighborhood design option overlay. Planning started on this project, believe it or not, was back in 2004. And that's a lot of why we're here this evening. So it's been a long planning process. We've had to adapt to the market over that time. With that, there was an ordinance change that the township enacted into the optional density incentive ordinance that is referenced. So we're looking at if we can make the current plan adapt to that ordinance change. So the preliminary plan I mentioned was approved back in 2010. What you see up there on the screen, that was a mix of single-family duplexes, townhouses, and multifamily. That totaled 405 units. Phase one, as the final plan received approval, that was 30 units. That's completely built out. That was single-family duplexes and townhouses. Phase two went into construction. That was totaling 113 units. And that was a mix of single-family duplexes and townhouses as well. And that also introduced multifamily units. The conditional use was revised in 2015, and that was really primarily for the unit type mix. At that time, they recognized that there was a shift in the market. We traded out some townhouses for some duplexes, trying to respond to what people were wanting to buy. As a result, that unit count dropped. So we went from 405 to 399. So that became the maximum number of units that were proposed as part of the project. During that time in phase two, it was revealed that City of Lancaster had some challenges with water capacity. Some of you may recall some of the conversations we had about the project. There was a period of time there where we had to kind of shift gears, essentially work on a water system that could supply the development. So we can jump to the next slide, please. So that shows the site that was basically an adjustment to allow for the water vault. So at the top of the screen there, right about central where the drive comes out, there's a little rectangle there, right about dead center of the top. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's an underground water storage vault and pump system that was added to the project to supply water to the remaining portion of the development. So as we walked through the project and now looking ahead to phases 3 and 4, it brings us again to the reason why we have a text amendment before you. We're trying to again adapt to that 20 years of land planning. The idea was just to continue the idea of a livable community with attractive architecture, site amenities. We adjusted the layout to respond to the need to have that water vault there. In that location was previously a stormwater management basin. So without that, now phases 3 and 4 requires a change. So we can accommodate that stormwater management. In addition to that, over 20 years of planning, as you are aware, there's been changes to DEP regulations regarding NPDES permitting and stormwater management. That too requires to adapt the layout or change that. We also took the opportunity to reduce stream impacts. So as we took a step back, we looked at the original plan had 5 roadway crossings on this project. And we realized it's probably more than we really need. So we removed one of the stream crossings. So we now went from 5 to 4. There's still circulation through there. We have a private drive with public access and we'll have an easement for emergency access as well. And we're looking at modifying a portion of phase 2 that's specific to the multifamily. And that's also to respond to, again, just what customers or tenants are looking for, trying to be more efficient with construction, reduce the number of buildings, increase the number of units per building for the multifamily. And then looking at wrapping up the project, really just to complete it for residents and the township. So there's been, again, no increase with the new plan, no increase in the unit count. That's still 399. We met with township staff over the last several months, multiple times, received feedback from them on the plan presentation, on proposed text amendment. We took that feedback, modified the plan a few times, worked through with staff and the township engineer. And what you see, if you can jump to the next plan, please. That's where we ended up. And that's really the basis of the text amendment. If we're successful with the text amendment, just to kind of give you a big picture, we'd be back before you with a conditional use process, going through that. And we'd be back yet again through the land development process for the final plans for phases 3 and 4 and a portion of phase 2. Parallel with that, we would amend the NPDES permit that's active on the project to account for the changes. And just as an FYI, we did meet with PennDOT, had a scoping meeting to bring them up to speed with some of these changes. They're main question was, how do you increase the unit count? The answer was no. We did have the traffic engineer walk through prior traffic study to make sure it's consistent, and covers what we're proposing here. They found that to be satisfactory and said we can move into the HOP stage, so that we continue as well. So in terms of a summary of the text modifications for your request, I did note some of the, I'll call it highlight items. One of those is with single family homes, the prior side yard setback was 6 feet. We're looking at amending that to allow 5 feet side yards for the single family homes. And that's pretty consistent with what you're seeing with developments of this type, when you have it more like a neo-traditional style, mixed use type of residential with your single family, your duplexes, your towns, and your multifamily. Perimeter setback was previously at 35. We're looking at making that 20 feet. It would be at least 20 feet. You can see that along that eastern edge that we do. And to put landscaping there, we'll have that buffer in there as well. And then the garage setback had a previous offset of 10 feet from the base of the building. We're looking at just carrying that across. So you would not have a situation where a garage is forward. You'll just have that in the garage in line with the unit or back. So that was one of the modifications we had as well for the text amendment. And then really the multifamily, that was specific to the number of units per building, as I mentioned earlier. So we were looking at modifying the ordinance to allow up to 80 dwelling units per multifamily building. And the multifamily building would be a 5 feet long. So depicted on that in that magenta purple color is where you have those multifamily buildings. The way we have it positioned was to keep that multifamily building along Route 23 up close to 23. The multifamily buildings that are situated on the west side of the site along that streetscape, and then on the east side also having that little green space there, but to keeping that building close up to the streets and having that parking behind the buildings, trying to keep with the overall context of the plan. And then the balance of what I would say is a highlight for the changes is the mixed use percentages. So there was criteria in there for how much percent of each unit type you have. I think the important thing to note is that we're still maintaining that unit index. And that's a key element of the ordinance, was to have that variety of housing being offered to residents. So we maintain the single family, the townhouses, the duplexes, and multifamily. What you're seeing is an increase in the multifamily. Right? We're trying to, again, have that broad spectrum of availability. For the multifamily, we believe it offers a little more affordability as well. So that's why you see that increase. For context, the prior plan, the multifamily was about 44%. The change to multifamily on the plan we're looking at here would take up to 51%. The other percentage mixes are within a couple percentage, really. It's just swapping that percent to the multifamily. I guess in summary, I think it's important to point out that over the time, of course, the period of the project, again, we talked about how the ordinances have changed. So if we were not here tonight, we would try to implement this plan and just continue it as what we're doing design. It technically would be a lawful non-conforming use because of the change of the ordinance. So some of this is to correct that non-conforming use that would occur. The code amendment is intended to bring the project in compliance, respond to the market conditions, and other current regulatory requirements, primarily stormwater. One of the things that changed with the stormwater is you can see towards the center there where that stream is, we've previously had the development more aggressively shown against the stream. But with the new stormwater management regulations, we really just need to shift that east. That's part of why we had some of those dimensional requests to allow, you can see now there's that green buffer. So we're capturing that stormwater, treating it, releasing it before going to the stream, rather than doing it kind of randomly throughout the site. The idea is here, let's capture that before it gets into the stream right along that edge, create that green buffer. As far as reviews, we do have the county review letter, and I would say they offer general support for the amendment. They pointed out reasons for that is that it offers a mix of housing opportunities, it offers connection and proximity to open spaces, and it's certainly an efficient land use. So, our goal would be to continue to move forward with the project, move through phases 3 and 4, really wrap up the project.
Jacob, is there a hearing scheduled for this?
Yes, March 6th.
The public's information, just to emphasize something he said, the only thing we're discussing tonight is the text amendment to the ordinance. We are not approving a land development plan. We're not approving a new conditional use. Those will come at future points in time to the planning commission and to the board of supervisors. The text amendment does give them direction for that conditional use request and that development plan when it's made. But I just wanted to make it clear, everybody understands, tonight is just about the text amendment.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, Rob Lewis, counsel for Keystone. And to that point, as you heard from Chris, who gave a much better summary than I ever could, I have actually been involved in this since 2008. So I've been through this process with Keystone. And as Chris noted, kind of giving some of the history, in prior situations where there were some changes that were necessary to make to the plan to adjust the housing market or NPDES permitting changes, all those things. The ordinance that originally governed the project was still in effect, and we could come back in and hold a conditional use hearing and address those changes. Obviously, we would talk to staff beforehand, and we did that, I think, at least twice over the course of the 20 years this has been going on. But because the township adopted amendments or significant changes to that ODI optional density incentive ordinance back in 2016, as Chris mentioned, our current plan is already lawfully non-conforming. What that means from a procedural standpoint is we can't simply amend the conditional use. And so the only way that we can work with staff to change the project a little bit, to adapt, is to make certain text amendments. So that's why we're in a bit of different procedural context than we have been in the past. It's the only way we can work with the project just because of some of those other changes.
Thank you. Can I read this question? Do you have a suggested new unit mix? So with your other changes, you changed the unit mix related to single family, duplex, et cetera. It's still a 399 with a new concept plan. Obviously, that has larger family units on this phase of the project. So is there a new unit mix that you're looking at?
Yes, yeah, I can walk through that. Happy to. So again, if you go back to the preliminary plan, I'll start with that. That had 134 single family homes that represented 33%. 32 duplex units represented 8%. 59 townhouse units representing 15%. And multifamily was 180 units at 44%. The plan that we're proposing as we looked at this text amendment and the concept that you have up on the screen there, that single family is now 144 at 36%, duplex at 24, 6%, townhouse at 29 at 7%, and then multifamily at 202 being 51%.
Thank you. If I can ask the question, you were here earlier later last year and presented a concept plan to the planning commission. I've noticed those concept plans have changed slightly, particularly related to the multi-unit buildings that were proposed. You had more multi-unit buildings in the original concept plan than you do now. So I'm assuming as part of the request for the 285 feet versus the 150 feet. And obviously the number of units, there's an issue here in height for buildings too. So can you just tell me a little bit about why that's changing in the concept plan?
I think shot at it, maybe you can answer better, Mickey, but we work with the architect in-house at Keystone, and they pointed out it's really in response to what we're seeing in the market. Like, what do people want? Where do you have efficiency in construction? The plan that we had to, when we looked at changing over to the single buildings versus the multiple buildings, we end up reducing the impervious coverage, which helps us from a stormwater standpoint. We still park it. So we're really just trying to, it's efficient land use is what we were striving for, but I guess specifically parking that.
Yeah. Mickey Thompson, and these people in for Keystone Custom Homes. Apologize, I had surgery, so I'm wearing sweats with slush. But yeah, so about 20 years ago, like the garden style, we used to walk sort of like all rage, and you couldn't really swing a hockey stick without hitting the plant somewhere that had a 3-story garden. So in the last few years, we've architects. We've looked out to the market and those are just tired and not as rentable as they once were. So what we're seeing is having larger spaces, able to put more common space within the building, gyms and all those certain things that you really can't do with a three-story walk-up building. And I think really the conservation of the actual space in the parking lot areas, when you have multiple buildings, you have to spread them out and then you have to try to fit those spaces. Really didn't afford a lot of land management that has been so diligent working on and trying to provide those spaces there. So that's where we have like focused our attention on trying to make larger buildings have more density within them, but also offer, more green space opportunities than what those original needs.
Thank you. On the lot width and setback requirement changes that you're requesting, you added a single family detached category. You now have a front loaded dwelling unit. You now have a alley loaded dwelling unit. Just curious why, and then the alley loaded I know is significantly less rear yard than front loaded.
I think that as I'm looking at that, the alley loaded, we're looking at, you don't have a traditional backyard, right? It's really a concrete or asphalt apron to the alley. So that's really the difference in that rear. So with a conventional single family home, you have a deeper backyard, but in a rear load situation, you just have a short apron before you get to that right of way, an alley, which is actually consistent with what we have in phase 1 and 2 of the project.
So the units that you have that do not have street driveways, for lack of a better word, so the yellow units, those are all alley loaded?
Correct.
You asked for a significant change in the setback requirements from 20 feet to 35 feet. And then again, attached language related to the alley units can be set back up to 82 feet from the 3 feet. 35 is fine. I'm curious about 82 feet setback for the alley loaded.
I believe that is probably where we have green spaces in front. So if you're looking at the plan directly south of that large L-shaped. So we're trying to again create a unique project where you don't have, not all of the units are right up against the streetscape, where we introduce linear or rectangular shaped green spaces in front of those buildings. So by doing so, you end up pushing that building back off that streetscape.
Okay. Thank you. The change in height, I'm assuming, is related to the multifamily, the 40 to 60 feet, and 60 feet is our story.
Or not to exceed 4 stories.
The height is really for any of the mechanicals or anything on top.
Yep.
Yep.
So you're basically looking at adding 1 floor to what you originally had looked at with the three story plan.
It's a pretty strong.
Plus one. Yeah. Talking about dwelling types, having street elevations detailed at the quality level. You have at least 75% of all garage doors shall face an alley or access drive. Vehicular access to and from at least 75% of all doors shall be from an alley or access drive. The only dwellings having street access or single family dwellings. Just wanted to clarify that one. Again, going back to your concept drawing. All those, the light yellow or the single family. Yellow or the alley loaded.
So the units around the perimeter, that's maybe like a tan color, those are single family.
Yeah.
Front driveway access to the street, and then the bright yellow would be also single family, but it'd be alley loaded. That particular section that you reference is really specific to that garage requirement. So it's about making sure we do not have a garage that's facing forward or extending beyond the face of the house. We'll make sure we have that porch come across the entire frontage where that garage is either in line with that porch or behind.
Added this pocket park definition to, can you explain why?
Yeah. Working with that. That original definition and dimensional requirements we found to be just very restrictive. So in working with staff, we said, let's make sure we're introducing these parks, maintaining the park spaces, but let's loosen up on the park definition or dimensional requirements. So we wanted to make sure that we could have, again, like as pointed out, a pocket park where maybe it's a little bit smaller, doesn't need to support the entire community, but maybe it becomes more like a little sub neighborhood.
And then in that park section and the pocket park section, you added language that permits 90% of the land area designated as such part of the pocket park. Contains slope that does not exceed 5%. Why that language change?
That might have been conversations with staff. I don't know why we landed there, but other than that,
Related elevation.
just a typical slope that you don't want to exceed, particularly from an ADA standpoint. If you exceed 5%, then you're looking at railings. So that was really why we had that 5% threshold. It was really just to demonstrate that we're going to have a usable, park, accessible for all.
That's the only questions I had. Does anybody have any questions on the technical? I have some other questions that are kind of related, but on the technical changes that they're requesting. I'll just go ahead and then we can always come back to that. So my general questions are about and for the public's point of view, this is not about Devon Creek. This text amendment change allows any developer to then use this overlay in the way it's written. So that's why I'm asking some of the questions I'm asking. So I'm just curious about parking. So all of the single family and duplex units and townhouse, and duplex units have garage access, correct?
The alley loads would have had garage and they still do.
Yes.
The forward facing garages would have had, parking obviously in them, and the same was true for the new plan, so that's consistent.
And then the width of the streets within this particular concept plan. Is there any concern about the design and width of the streets that you're allowed to have related to emergency vehicle access, if parking on the streets permitted?
Well, I know we went through that extensively during the original conditional use plan and preliminary plan, the final plans. Would have coordinated that with emergency services. We are not reducing those street widths as part of this concept plan. In fact, I think the minimum width that I'm seeing for like a street A classification is 12 feet per travel lane. And we're actually providing 12 and a half, a little bit more, so 25 feet versus 24. But yeah, we would have coordinated that with emergency services and we're not reducing that width. So, and we will continue to do that as we get into the engineering of the plan, we get making sure we're running that truck movement through the site for emergency services.
Hold the other question for the landing. So, in terms of, you said the unit mix is changing, but the unit count is not changing. And you said there shouldn't be any impact on traffic. The same access points and egress points and concept plans are in the original plan for the most part. But with the change in unit mix and the increased number of apartment units that you have versus single family and duplex, potential for more traffic related to those multifamily units, as opposed to the single family and duplex that you had before. Can you just talk a little bit about that expectation of the increase in traffic related to the change? And both in terms of concept design from multiple buildings to single buildings.
So as part of the land development process and the conditional use process, we are required to update our traffic impact study at each phase, particularly with respect to the Hornet Road intersection, which has always from day one been the most significant concern. So as we go through the next steps, the land development and conditional use that we have to do, we will have to update them. We talked actually in is working with generally speaking, because of the bedroom counts, you likely would see the same or less traffic from a multi-family than you would a duplex or a single family, right? It's a single family house, if you have 3 or 4 bedrooms in it, you could easily with teenagers and 2 adults have 3 cars, for that unit, whereas a 2-bedroom apartment, you're probably limited at most to 2. So you are likely a 1-to-1 swap there, you're probably talking a reduction in traffic. The swap here is generally between duplexes and towns or multifamily. So in a worst case scenario, we're expecting that the total number of trips generated by the project will actually come down. If worst, it would be even. But again, we're going to have to demonstrate that through our traffic fee. And one of the challenges, in addition to the NPDES permitting changes, is as time goes by, as you all know, traffic generally, which we call background, has increased substantially. We have to account for that. So we have to take into effect all that background traffic growth and then now again reapply our trips that we're generating and mitigate if there are any impacts. So the time has hurt us there as well, but it's our obligation now to mitigate. We can more detail on that, the conditional use and land development.
So question along that line. So with those updated traffic. Hold your question. So the planning commission is done addressing the applicant and then I'll give you an opportunity. Okay.
So we've already 3 meetings with PennDOT regarding this. From what Rob said, it preliminarily traffic counts are down more than preliminarily down that we had prior. So obviously we're preliminary and that can go up or go down, but we were encouraged that it wasn't going to work.
But I have a tendency to try to simplify things. And this is a really extensive text amendment, but if I can simplify and correct me if I'm wrong. Most of the changes you're asking are for unit mix to significantly increase multifamily, stormwater management issues, green space issues, and to some extent setback issues related to those others. Is that an oversimplification of what you're asking for?
I think that's a pretty accurate simplification of it, in the broad brush strokes. And to that point, if I can, to expand upon that, I'm really happy actually with the county review because the county is supporting those changes because we are continuing the mix in housing options. They're encouraging us to finalize this project because of what it does present in terms of that walkability, more intense development in a space to preserve open space, right? Which is what this project has always been about, preserving as much of green space as you can. And that's really what this is emphasizing. You're taking, the space that would have been occupied by a 3-unit townhouse, and now you're able to actually condense that, put it on the floor in the multifamily. And so you're actually preserving land while not increasing density on the overall project. So I think that the county got that, and that's what they're encouraging as well, that this really emphasizes what the optional density incentive concept was all about. Maintaining walkability, things like that as well.
And my last comment is I did comment on this at the last review last year. Just a little concern about the change in mix, not necessarily the size of the increase to multifamily that's needed in the county. No question, but the drop in townhouse and duplex. Just my comment last year was about the ability for people to step up in their housing choices. So you go to the apartment, you step into a townhouse, you step into a semi-detached, then you buy a house. Not everybody moves in those steps, but a lot of people do. So reducing those townhouse and duplex units is a little bit of a concern for me. And that's why I'm a little concerned about the 55% mix. It doesn't prevent someone from still having a mix of units, but I just want you to understand that's my one concern, I think, about the significant increase, 55%.
Believe study maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago that came out that most people are staying in the 12 years where previously it was 7 to 8 years.
That's more because of interest rates, I think.
Well, it's interest rates, but it's also, obviously land is precious and we're, they're not going down, right? So people are staying in their homes longer. So where traditionally that step up community and again, that the garden style walk-up apartment and moving from place, I think that was way we planned it out, 20 years ago, and we're just not seeing that. And that's why when we looked at the market conditions going forward and how to have a successful community, this is the way we decided.
So I've taken enough board time on other members of the commission to have questions specifically to the text amendment and then general question.
With the unit count staying roughly the same, is there a projected impact on the community's water well? And would there be an increased drag on the demand or increase in the demand for water? I know I'm probably getting ahead of the.
No, it's a fair question, just like traffic, right? The total number of occupants in this concept is likely the same or less than the total number of occupants that would be at Devon Creek under the power plant, right? Because in a multifamily unit, you're not likely to have as many people within that same unit as you might have in a duplex or a town. So again, just like the traffic, it follows very similar there. So if anything, it'd be less of a demand on the water infrastructure. In both cases, should be the same.
Just because they don't ask questions doesn't mean they didn't have questions, but maybe my questions answered their questions. I'm going to give the commission member the second chance. Public, Larry, you have a question?
So the first question that I have was around the traffic study. So I was here in 2011 when the first of the magical wall of trying to stick gel into what this is going to finally look like. And at that point in time, I was provided, a request was provided by your organization, the traffic study. In this space, I've worked in this construction environment world. And at that point in time, there was pretty significant concerns about just the overall traffic study itself. To your point, there's been an increase in traffic in this area. If you look at that particular concern, because I live in the corner that's connecting there, and in that 2011, so when you're going to come off of Coach Light Lane and go into the new adjacent facility, my house is the corner, so the pool down just a little bit there, the corner, the caddy corner. So you have a four-way stop sign that's going to be there, and you're going to have all these dwelling units going from a very narrow street and very congested, and they're going to open to a much wider berming street. And there's already a general and natural increase on Hartman Station Road. We now have the quarry, Snake Hill Quarry trucks that are coming through at all hours of the early mornings and through the evenings. 80,000 ton vehicles, rolling through there. You have massive increase on 23 and you have Hornig Road. So is there going to be a reduction if the revised traffic study says, hey, this is just too much volume for this area? Because it's going to be come to that stop sign out of that narrow. You can't really put. I drove it yesterday because another scenario that happens oftentimes is that currently the back road is also named Coach Landing, and that's Coach Landing that's not connected right now. So packages are always delivered in the wrong location. So I'm over I have a Ford F. I can barely get through there. We drove it yesterday. We were dropping some stuff off to some of the neighbors that didn't get their deliveries. They were dropping items, and you can't get two vehicles through there. You have little parking issues, and then two cars can't pass each other that way. Particularly if you've got towing mirrors on it, can't get through there. It's so congested, so narrow. And it was the first nice day yesterday. It was chaos going through there. I was terrified. Kids, it's, there's big wheels of bicycles and tricycles and people, and they're very short driveways. So those kids that are living in those back room offices, they're out just kind of playing in the streets of the common areas. I mean, I drove through there yesterday and I said, this is going to get killed back here. Like, it's crazy.
So I don't want to cut off conversation or discussion, but your question is really related to a land development plan.
Well, it is. So basically, they're going to be a modification of land development. and this mass density.
But that's what I'm just saying, is from our perspective, this is about the text amendment. The land development plan, the planning commission can address those issues about traffic and traffic studies and traffic congestion, parking, the things that I raised. But I just wanted to make sure we don't get too far off.
Fair enough. It's been such a moving target for so long. It's very difficult to kind of figure out which committee we're talking, and all the faces have changed.
Is that Monday? Is that Monday?
It's Tuesday nights. Planning commission meets the second Tuesday of every month.
It's coming Monday. Is that something that we should?
That's on the text amendment. That's not a land development plan. Everything today in the public hearing is about the text amendment only. It's not about phase 4 development. That will occur whenever they submit it for review. And we'll have the same kind of conversations. We'll have a letter from David Miller Associates looking at the zoning ordinance, the land development ordinance, subdivision and everything else. So I just want to make sure we don't get too far off onto land development issues. But you're on record, that point is on record. I've raised the issue of traffic as well, and I know it's been an issue for planning commission members.
And then I don't know if it was zoning or planning or whatever the previous meeting was, but back in 2011, they had agreed at that point in time to investigate traffic calming measures and other things that I don't see included any or addressed since the original plans. They went as far at that point in time to talk about not connecting the very low density and very high density differences with security gates or fire access for planters or things of that nature. None of those things have been discussed on here. So, yeah, from the language from the township standpoint, that they're really concerned about this model for recreation in areas, particularly where they marry up to the lower density neighborhood.
That's part of the challenge of zoning and land development planning. Zoning allows certain things. The land development planning process will say, is it appropriate for that location? But if it meets the ordinance, the zoning or the subdivision land development ordinance, the township also has limited ability to address a particular issue. But this is a zoning issue, not a subdivision land development ordinance issue. Just wanted to make sure that everybody's clear of that distinction. Okay. Are there other questions or comments? Yes.
I would like to comment. I live in the neighborhood, excuse me, I'm losing my voice, behind the field there. And with the zoning, changing it from 35 feet to 20 feet is very concerning to me. That exists in our codes to maintain adequate space between properties, to preserve our privacy and to protect property values. I respectfully request that the board ensure that the project complies with the minimum rear yard setback, so not changing that text amendment to 20 feet. My big concern with changing that to 20 feet, you're bringing it closer. You had addressed stormwater management in your presentation. Stormwater management you were talking about was along Route 23 and the stream that runs right along Fritz and going into your neighborhood, the Devon Creek neighborhood. It doesn't address near my property where I currently have a swale that runs through my property coming off of that field. The swale runs through my yard and into neighboring yards before it reaches the storm sewer. The drainage is strong enough that any mulch that's in its path will get washed away. So we have to maintain the area with grass and river rock in order to prevent erosion. So moving that zone closer down to 20 feet will impact that swale and can cause flooding. Under the Pennsylvania Stormwater Management Act, development should not increase runoff into neighboring properties. I'm concerned that homes and the grading changes in impervious surfaces being closer to the property line could increase the volume and the speed of water going into the swale. I would ask that the township engineer review whether this development will increase the peak runoff toward neighboring properties, because swales do need adequate buffer zones to function properly and to prevent flooding. And narrowing the rear setback will increase the risk of overflow, property damage, and make it harder to maintain the drainage system effectively.
I want to. Are you referring to the language that no residential dwelling shall be set back more than 35 feet from the street right of way?
From the rear setback from code section 375-60-30, that the minimum rear yard setback in an R2 zone is 35 feet.
You're in the land subdivision ordinance?
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking. I'm kind of back to that same thing. Those very issues, overflow of stormwater, encroachment of stormwater, is a subdivision land development ordinance issue and stormwater management ordinance issue that would be addressed once they file a land development plan. The only reason I asked that is I didn't see anything in here that was reducing rear yard setbacks.
So the 35 feet that he's talking about going to 20 is not a rear yard.
It's from the street right away, but I wanted to ask you to address her question. Will that impact the rear yard as well?
So the rear yard setback is 18 feet. We're proposing 20 at the perimeter. The prior ordinance did have what they call the perimeter buffer of 35 feet. We are requesting that to go to 20 as depicted on that plan.
Say that again. Yeah, show on the map what you're talking about.
I guess I'm probably saying again, when you look at a single family, this ordinance went up changing the fact it still would be 18 feet. We did have a discussion earlier about when it's an alley, that's just that for that short apron. I think what's being referred to is on the east side of the project here, what I'll call the parent tract, had a 35-foot yard, a 35-foot setback area. We're reducing that to 20. But the idea is that we are looking at introducing berming, landscaping to provide that privacy, to provide that separation. In terms of addressing the stormwater management side, all that. And as you pointed out, in zoning, we're not getting into that. We don't know for sure that this project is moving forward as shown. If we're successful through the text amendment, through then eventually the conditional use, and we get to land development, that's when we get into the engineering. That's when we're looking at stormwater. We will absolutely be, obligated to demonstrate how we're managing stormwater and not, to the point discussed, not increasing that runoff to other adjoining properties. We will have to reduce that.
So to her point, though, I just want to point out that by adding the single-family detached dwelling units alley loaded, you are asking for an 8-foot setback for those, but all of those are on the interior of they're not on the perimeter of the plan. They're all interior to the concept, not on the exterior. Right?
But when you pave, you're not allowing the water run. That's what causes like the flood. Like you're getting rid of vegetation. Vegetation reduces the rate of soil erosion.
So that reduction, this darker yellow, that reduction in the setback is the back-to-back setback of these units. Really, you're squeezing those units slightly this way so that they have their front yards and their open spaces. That reduction that was just mentioned is not with respect to the perimeters.
Is there a change at all? Sorry.
With respect to the school, and I'll try not to give full dissertation on stormwater management with an engineer standing next to me. We just an overview of stormwater management. There are 3 things that we're obligated to address with stormwater management that we addressed with our initial plan that we will now have to revisit even with this plan, right? When you design stormwater management, you have to address volume of runoff, rate of runoff, and the quality, the water quality that's going on. DEP ultimately has the most stringent regulations with respect to that. The township has its own regulations, but DEPs tend to be more stringent. We have to satisfy those requirements. All of our prior plans that we've had approved have demonstrated that we are managing the volume, the rate, and the quality of the runoff. And typically the best way to characterize that is we have to demonstrate that we are not increasing the volume from which was meadow condition of wind. Have to show that you're controlled within the reasonable rates allowed by DEP, and you have to monitor quality of. No offense to any of the farmers, in the audience, but Farmfield actually has terrible runoff all example. This project will not do that. We do have to clean that water before it enters the stream or enters into the public system. So we satisfy all of those with respect to stormwater under each of the prior iterations of the plan. We demonstrated compliance, and that's during the land development process. If we move to the next step and revise our plan, as we're showing it on this screen, we will again have to demonstrate that we comply with all of those requirements, even with the changes in where the units are, what's set back here, what's set back there. That doesn't change our obligation with respect to stormwater. In fact, what Chris was describing earlier with respect to some of these changes, Part of the problem with having taken 20 years to get this project all the way done is the regulations we had to comply with in 2008, 2010 have only gotten more stringent now. And Chris has had to modify our stormwater design from what could have been built in 2010, 2011 to now meet the new standards. So just imagine if the project had all been built out by 2015. Stormwater would be in, be done, project would be, just going on. Technically, when we're done with the project now, the rate of runoff, the volume of runoff and the quality of runoff is actually going to be better than had we finished construction in 2015, simply because the regulations have gotten more stringent. So the text amendment we're talking about here is in part to allow us the opportunity to comply with those more stringent regulations. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, if you're looking at concept drawings and you're looking at one from 2022 to 2024 to today, you'll see smaller backyards. But again, the text amendment is about unit mix and type. It is not about location necessarily. So the location of units will be developed for the land development plan and presented. This is just a concept plan, and we don't approve concept plans to allow them to move forward. So again, to make sure all of your concerns are heard, all of your concerns will be addressed during that subdivision land development planning stormwater management approval process. That will occur both by us, by the staff with stormwater management, and by the supervisors. So there will be ample opportunities whenever they submit their land development plan for you to review and comment.
A
Okay,
timeline?
it's their timeline. Yes, sir.
Just a quick question to clarify. The southeast corner of the project, there's about 8 houses there that are adjacent to the properties on Ford Way. You know what I'm talking?
About midway up the street.
No, the very southeast corner. There's about 8 houses there, adjacent to Ford Way. The new ones.
What's that?
Correct. Yep, those up the right your back, right there. What is the setback on those houses? To the houses on Porter Way?
Well, the setback would be measured from the property line
Yeah.
inward. So the distance between the homes is obviously going to be greater.
Yeah.
But from the property line to the unit is 20 feet is what's proposed.
So that's like there is, as Christina said, there's a stormwater runoff there. So that's like the center line of the easement to the edge of the house, correct?
If we had an easement back there, it would be 20 feet wide.
So that doesn't increase.
The easement would be within.
That would be to the center line of the easement, I take it. 20 feet center line of easement to the house. And you're telling me the easement would be 20 feet?
No, so the width of the setback, the perimeter there is 20 feet wide. That easement, if we had an easement there, it would be laid right over top of that 20 feet. If there was a 20-foot wide stormwater easement, it'd be right over top of that, not occupy that same space.
10 on one side, 10 on the other, correct?
10 and 10, if you're going center line, sure.
Yeah, so, okay, so the center line of the easement to the back of those new single family homes is 20 feet, is what you're telling me?
I'm sorry?
20 feet center line of easement to the edge of the rear of the house, of the single family.
I'm not sure if you're referring to that there's already an existing easement on your property.
Swell. Yeah, from the center line of the swell to the new houses will be 20 feet.
If I'm following you right, I think you're saying that so there's a property line, and as we move east into your neighborhood, maybe there's a swale on your property. That swale might have an easement that encompasses it.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's it. What we would do is, we have again the 20-foot setback on the west side of the property. And if we do need to, have that drainage, if it's a linear drainage swale, we would have to put that swale in an easement. That easement would be 20 feet wide. They would occupy in the same spot as the actual buffer.
So that easement would just be centered up on the property line that we share with the new homes and homes on Broadway.
No, the easement would be entirely on the development side. So the entire swale and the entire easement would be completely on this.
That doesn't make sense to me because it's existing now. I have one of those properties that we have the easement there. So you tell me that's gonna move?
No, it's a great point now. We don't. So what happened is when your neighborhood was built, you were required to manage the stormwater. The developer was required to manage the stormwater on that property. So in most cases, you end up having a swale or some type of stormwater control right at that. To not encumber the rest of the project or backyard, as you want to encumber that as least as possible. So on this side of the project, we have to do the same thing. So in turn, what you have is, yes, you might have a section where there's two swales running parallel, each along one side or the other. There's well not being modified in any way. It's just one of those situations where property was developed, we have to manage stormwater, that might have been doing a swale. On the other side, on the project, we have to manage stormwater. We have to manage possibly doing swale. We end up having a swale, property line, swale.
Is that the plan, right? Or is it just one big, just one big swing?
It will be. If, say, if, you know, some people might say the right thing to do is, hey, why not just combine it into a single swell and run right down the middle of that property line? That then would require each resident along your neighborhood to say, yes, let's do that. And I don't think anybody wants their yard ripped up, so that's probably not a viable option.
Okay.
So the confusion is, those houses, their property line is going to be 20 feet from our property line. Or it is.
Their house will be.
The houses,
Their house
the
will-
property line is not 20 feet.
That's, you took the five speed, but that's a largest option scenario. We're gonna have some situations where people aren't putting on the bump outs, not putting on the big decks. So that house is gonna be further away.
Right.
What we're trying to depict is the maximum number of options, the maximum size unit that might be possible on that lot. That's really just to be conservative from a stormwater standpoint. So as was discussed with traffic, in the end, our assumptions are gonna be grossly high, just for levels of, protection and safety. We're gonna end up generating less runoff than what our computations show because we're being so conservative.
I was more concerned about that house being 20 feet from my property line, which it sounds like it's going to be. That's pretty close.
It could be in a maximum build out condition. Everybody's gonna select all the options, but we have a plan.
Is there a setback to the two houses or dimension?
The setback from the property to the closest point of that house would be built.
Okay, that would be your jungle stack or maybe candle garage.
Yeah, I believe the township doesn't require us to put decks, that's those decks.
Today it's 35. Like, changes, so.
That's.
That's our thing.
Or consent text amended or.
And not just that, but some of the houses on Coach Light Lane there that are facing Coach Light Lane, that setback is only 5 feet because you have the 5 foot. It's not really, I guess, setback, right? It's the distance between the property lines and the side of the house. So in some instances, in particular on the corner there, you've got a house that's 5 feet off the property line.
No, so the ones that are, let's call it perpendicular to Coach Light Lane, that first one, the first you would see coming in from your development into this project. Because even though that is a site, there is a perimeter buffer, which requires that one also to maintain 20 feet on that side. So that one can't get any closer to the property line than the rear yards of the others. And that's how it is today, to maintain that separation. So that under this code, yes, it's a side, but that trumps, and you have to have the 20 feet.
And then you mentioned earlier, this goes back to a little bit of the traffic stuff that you were discussing. You could potentially have, let's just say, you're assuming up to 3 cars, or how many cars are going into garages of all of these houses? And
I'm going to stop you on that question. That is definitely a land development plan issue, not a zoning text amendment issue. So I need to keep focusing on the zoning text amendment this evening. So I appreciate those comments, but hold them and come to the land development plan meeting and see those conversations.
It's likely to be several months before that plan is.
I do want to ask everybody who spoke, and even if you didn't, I think everybody's, well, you may not have spoken. Please make sure you sign in and with your name and address so the township knows who was here to make comments. Okay, thank you. Any last comments on the text amendment?
You have one.
I hope you don't think,
The text amendment.
I hope you don't think I'm cutting you, that I'm cutting you off.
That would never be like that.
I just want to make sure we're focused on what's.
Website that I didn't see it.
There's
That'll be posted for the public
For the
hearing.
public hearing on the website, there's a posting for it. If you give me your contact, I can make sure you get that at the end of the
I
meeting.
think it was just, yeah, okay. This is, this is the amendment, but you were comparing the existing.
So you'll want to go to you go to the township's website and you look for the township code. Click on the codes and find the zoning code. And then find this section, which is the optional development,
Optional density incentive.
optional density incentive. It's in the other section, so it's at the very end of the zoning ordinance. And then you can compare what they're asking for with what's there today.
Is there a dates where they kind of drop off? Because I was looking for the language on the minutes for, in 2011, where there was the agreement to investigate traffic calming measures and whatnot. Is there, does it expire, they come down over time? Is it so long, but it never even get uploaded possibly? Yeah.
For the minutes from,
You were trying to, I'm kind of going back and saying, like, look, we've never done that things we need to do already. And this thing's changed so many times, so I went back and look for it, like, we're fine.
And Jacob, if I gave my card, please share it amongst yourself. If you email me, I can send you, all those requirements are parts of the conditional use orders. I'm happy to send you copies.
Yeah, I think actually, were you around back then? Yes, I think you actually sent me the traffic study and,
Happy to send you any of that.
but at that time. But, what was the conversation? We talked about traffic calming measures, speed bumps, we talked about.
It's not the discussion. We've had over the 20 years, I can't even count the number of meetings that we have had to discuss it. But it's worth, and we have to continue those conversations. One of the important parts, sorry to drag this out, of all the conditional use decisions was sometimes the developer, when they come in, they do one traffic study, they get their plan approved, they build, it's done, right? They're going. Because this was a phased project, it was a large project, it was an important project for the township, and for us. Every time we went through a new phase, we had to come back to the township and update all those studies. Some of them you'll actually find, particularly with respect to traffic, the amount of traffic generated per home turned out to be less than the traffic study thought it would be. Now, NDOT also requires you to project traffic out. Those projections have relatively been accurate, if anything, a little low, particularly because of what we went through, with the recession. But we have to update all of that. So you're welcome to have that information.
You may remember, but back at last time we had this conversation when you shared the traffic study with me in 2011, one of the comments that I said, as a newer neighbor in that neighborhood, is that the general consensus from our neighboring neighborhood was that we saw some concern about the impact. And we felt like if you just either would relax your requirement for revenue and density per acre or some of that nature, so that it was such a stark difference, or added some different calming measures, we'd probably be much more amenable to it. But everybody's been very well tied up in storm that about it back then, and then now it's kind of come back.
Okay, I don't want to cut everything off, but if we're done with the text amendment piece. And with the comment that you're not in favor of 35 feet.
And in favor of 35, not in favor of 20.
Oh, okay. So you're actually in favor of the. Did have another question on.
Design criteria for the. Yeah, 3A, street B, alley and. Change it, then you were letting some parking. And also. Horizontal center line 80 to 40 feet. For the sake of the public, could you point out what falls into street A, what falls into street B, and how those changes might happen?
Great question. I think throw off the top of my head.
Just to make sure, and this is a correction for you, your table actually says one lane. Feet wide.
We meant one
Or 2 lanes.
My apologies. You can tell there was a lot going on.
No, I just want to make sure. That,
I think the county, their review letter below type of gravel.
yeah, it did. Okay, well, for the public's point of view, it says the table they have on their ordinance amendment says one or one. Related to parking lanes, it's actually one or two, each 8 feet wide. The current ordinance says one lane, each 8 feet wide. They want to say one or two lanes, each 8 feet wide. I think.
That
You'll have
sounds,
to check that.
okay.
Okay. So it's not changing the width of the lanes, it's changing the number.
It's back to the question of the, I think what you're referring to with the 4 mile center line under street B.
That was an 80.
Then a horizontal curve.
Yeah, horizontal center line. Looking at the plan, if I had to guess, I believe it might be this one. But again, at land development, what we would do is make sure we can run the fire apparatus, emergency services goes through there and towards. Wide.
Just for clarification, you're saying at both the southwest and southeast corners.
It could be, but look a little
Bump outs there. It's like,
it looks like the southwest corner is a little tighter than. That might be both locations.
So the 40 feet request is dependent on emergency management services agreeing that that's reasonable.
Fairly certain our team would have already run that truck. I don't have a print of that, so I don't want to say that we did. Fairly certain. Function of this piece. Less so to speak because of the changes. Space, the stormwater management.
One other correction, just for your, on the changes to. Two, related to open space. You have A, C, B, E, G.
Yeah, the county pointed that out too. And I think
Those are the only two I recall. Okay. Any other questions from the planning commission? So again, we are tonight acting on the text amendment. We are not approving the text amendment. That is the responsibility of the township supervisors. They will hold a public hearing on the 16th, I think it's been identified, to allow additional public comment on the text amendment as it's been presented this evening. Unless, as part of the motion, there are changes that we would recommend to the board of supervisors. I'll just leave it to the members. If there's any comments from Jacob? No, there's not. So the motion would be to recommend approval of the text amendment as presented, related to land development plan 2025-28. Optional density incentive overlay district. It's not the Devon development. I just want to point that out as well. You don't have the option of tabling it, but then the public hearing would go on without a recommendation from the planning commission.
Yeah.
Considering this, could I make a recommendation for future text amendment submissions that you actually do a comparison of current language to new language as part of your submission? I know it's not a requirement, but it makes it a whole lot easier on the bodies that have to read. I spent a couple doing that.
I would imagine. What do you want we have submitted that to the staff? Doing that.
Then
So, one, the, number 2025 and 28. Roll it out there and see what happens, right? Plan number 2025-28. I move to recommend that the Board of Supervisors approve the ODI text amendments with the exception of the addition of the pocket park in section E2 and with the exception of the reduction in set. I'll also make note, even though it's not for today, that significant concerns regarding street width, particularly for emergency vehicle access while other vehicles are street parked, which is a realistic assumption. So I would also just make note for future land development planning, there are significant concerns with street width among other things.
could I ask you to add the community, nice county?
Yes. I also would add, subject to the conditions as outlined in the county plan dated 12/5/25. That's
I do have a motion with two exceptions to what is presented. I wanted to just check with the motion. Are you referring to the table of setback?
Yes, I am on the first page of my document. Yes, on the first page of your document, the J6, I think, is what that.
Yes, please.
J6, that's correct. But it wasn't as clean because mine was pretty.
The changes to the table that you made in J6. The lot width and setback requirement. Changing, adding the single family detached dwelling units alley loaded.
Yes, and actually, I appreciate the clarification. I also meant to capture that J7A as well. 35 is long. We need the clarification. So just to kind of summarize that, I feel like I worded that very poorly in this, very poorly. Plan number 2025-28. The ODI text amendments as proposed, with the exception of the amendments proposed in table J6, section J7A, and section related to the pocket park in E2, also subject to the 12.
We have a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
That motion.
All right, Mark. Any final conversation amongst planning commission members? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
Does somebody want a copy of my text amendment? Yeah. Or whatever.
So, let's clarify. Yeah. You approved it with exception to the setback from 35 to 20. Yeah, it was another section.
The table of setbacks and lot widths, they had two changes that we, one related to single family and alley loaded. And we did not approve that or recommend approval of that, and then the pocket tech.
The other thing I'd say is all of your thoughts speak for myself personally, share all of your concerns. But and that's why I appreciate Randy's clarification that tonight's focal point was the text amendment, which is more granular and narrow in focus than the overall land development plan, which I think we all share concerns about. So that's where the land development planning piece is going to be vital. And your involvement in that will be really important. Additionally, I would also note that our role as the planning commission is simply to make recommendations to the board of supervisors. In this township, the board of supervisors, that they're the ones that make the ordinance. So your participation in those meetings also.
Where?
Yeah.
Another clarification, so with this right along, they're changing density percentage to 54% of multifamily, then would that kind of carry through with this?
55%, it permits to a certain, in their particular development, it would be 55% of the 399 units are multifamily.
It's a little more nuanced because it sounds like in this proposal, they're adding a fourth floor on top of a third floor building. So it'll actually, even though unit count is going to be similar, it'll actually be more compressed in those apartment buildings, which are.
It's fewer buildings.
Correct, fewer buildings, exactly.
But roughly as many people.
Yes, just more.
Say apartments will be smaller than.
That'll,
Of course.
not necessarily. I mean, they could be 2 and 3 bedroom unit apartments.
Sure.
So it depends what they present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for checking in. Yes. We meet every second Tuesday of the month. Good friend.
Go first.
What?
The exception of the.
Except,
Yes.
do you then discuss amongst yourselves, or will there be another meeting? How does the process?
Part of our recommendation to exclude those changes,
Okay.
whether the supervisors, whether
And
they.
they could override it, they could modify it, they can make further clarifications or changes, so they're the ones that make it.
Thank you for bearing with me.
No, it's
all good. Yeah, good questions.
Or slowly.
Yeah.
Been a long ride.
Gentlemen, thank you for bearing with us. Next new item of business is 2026-01 land development plan for Lancaster Mennonite School at 2176.
The smallest land development plan you've ever had, or those.
Identify yourself.
Jim Winker, Richard. Right, heard from. LMS is looking to shift and renovate the first floor of the 2160 division. Renting out on Route 30. And as part of that, they want to add a roughly 140 square foot entry. That triggered us coming for a land plan, and the stormwater plan resistant. So the parking pretty much changes this. Green space, they're taking a portion of the well play, the second floor. Moving that into add additional square footage for building, LMS has been completely to this benefit. Office space. Really no change in traffic, no change in sewer, no change in water. The big issue for traffic issues, there was one comment. We did recently have this one comment from the village office about requiring 5-foot radiuses. Well, parking lot. Coming into the entry, there's no cars going to be traversing that little spot, and we want to keep the radiuses as tight as possible. It'll just make it easier to put the stairs, etc. We don't think the regulation really pertains to the condition, so we don't think a waiver is actually necessary.
Entrance point for emergency vehicles. The radius you're talking about is related to.
The radiuses we're talking about are here and here, which is a radius to the staircase. It's not really dealing with traffic.
It's understood. I thought you were talking about the entrance.
No. And the only other issue was what the responsibility was gonna be for LMS, the improvements to the Route 30 corridor to address the streetscape plan. At this point, it's our understanding at the moment that LMS just agreed to relocate their sign if and when that work actually moves forward, which they've already had those conversations with PennDOT, and we have a note on the plan reflecting the same. I think those are the touchy issues, but
County Planning Department had no comments.
kind of got. About bike rack or something.
Signature. Language. The David Mill letter dated February 3rd references the so there's land development issues. I think we need to address those with satisfaction of planning commission and Sam. Any questions from the commission? Supervisor.
Make motion on plan number 2026-01 to recommend an approval to the Board of Supervisors for the plan subject to the DMA letter dated Feb 3, 2026. And the county planning department letter dated 2/3 of 2026.
Second. Any further discussion? That's right, I forgot to announce that. Jansen is recusing himself just because of past relationships with Lancaster County, right? So he's not, that's why he didn't ask any questions. I was supposed to announce that before, but so anyway, any further conversation? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? So moved with one abstention.
Thank you. We did have Jacob to delay us, not be on the agenda for Monday, which I'm kind of glad now we won't be facing. Let's go. Neither of us will be open for tax.
I was gonna move you up, but. I didn't know if you were part of the group or not.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks. We'll move to briefing items. Jacob.
Okay, so for 2026-04, the land development plan for Smucker, but the 2008 Horseshoe Road. That address might be familiar to you because there's a land development plan for Lancaster Parts and Equipment at that same address. So that same property owner actually will be building his personal residence on the same parcel without a subdivision. So there is a other residence there, which triggers it to be a land development instead of a stormwater plan. That's kind of an interesting one. And we're still working internally with staff since the land development plan has not been closed out. So that may be some time before it comes.
They're using the access point from the other house to get to their house.
Yes. Things to work out on this one, so yeah, we'll see when it gets here. Another plan for another familiar property, for land development plan for Fenmore Homes, 35 South Willowdale Drive, so that's Rockvale. So Rockvale parcel 2, and parcel 5 have both been approved. Parcel 2, that's the 128 units that has sewer conveyance approved for that portion. Parcel 5, for the other units, they don't have the sewage conveyance capacity approved. So what they're doing is they're removing the clubhouse out of parcel 5 as its own land development plan. That way, the units that do have sewage will have a clubhouse.
I was curious why the old buildings were still on the plan instead of the new apartment buildings. Okay, that makes sense.
Yes, that's exactly why. That's why they don't see any apartments on there, just for the clubhouse. So what will be coming before here will just be questions to address the clubhouse, not apartments and property. Then the final one, this is just a simple lot add-on plan at 2402 Stumptown Road. Yeah, they're just basically reconfiguring their 2 lots.
Thank you. Other business, Lake County ordinance you have in your packet.
Yeah. A neighboring municipality doing an ordinance amendment. You guys at the staff level have these two staff comments that basically give you guys the opportunity to add to it. You make a recommendation to forward it to the board for their comment. Comments backed up for Lake Township. Questions about what's in that ordinance? No comments.
Does the township have any similar ordinance? For rental?
For short-term rentals, we have what's called forest homes, so we have.
I think I've reached my limit.
You've done well up until that point.
Okay. So it's basically an amendment that addresses short-term rentals. Township.
And there's actually another one addressing the agricultural uses.
Yeah. Then you had a couple brief comments from Jacob. Part of the packet as well.
And for the short-term rentals. Second comment was about enforcement. I had a discussion with the chief and police here, because actually they do the enforcement for Upper Lake Cop.
Yeah.
So they had some concerns about some of the language of basically enforcing when those licenses are revoked. So just some comments from the police, just basically clarifying more civil matters.
Yep. Blame it.
Can you refresh my memory on a 10,000 square foot lot? How many acres is that? Is it 1 acre or something? Trying to get us
41,000 square feet in an acre. It's something.
okay, so it's about a quarter acre. Roughly. How does this align the in B2 agricultural activities as an accessory use related to chickens and stuff? No more than 5 for lots between 10,000 square feet and 20,000 square feet. How does that align with the town, our township's wording?
I don't think we don't really regulate on lots. We're saying it's more just the zoning district.
Got it. Okay.
Other questions? Hearing that, we could make a recommendation. The supervisors actually.
Yes, this will actually, they'll actually,
Recommendations to the board of supervisors to forward Jacob's comments, police department's comments, to Upper Lake Town related to both ordinances. Part of what motion? Like 2 separate.
just one motion's fine.
It's just a.
Yes, I would like to have, pass along the zoning changes as outlined, with the changes as outlined, in the March 10th, 2026 letter, for both changes proposed, both for the housing and the agricultural.
Second.
Second for John. Take for the final motion. Opposed? So moved. I lived through it. Have a recognition of Dan from her. This is his last meeting. Yeah. I appreciated your dedication to the role. Going up, visiting sites. That's often important too. Thank you very much. It was short term, but
Yes, I've only fulfilled about half my duties, but I feel it was a pleasure working with each and every one of you, as well as the past members. And Jacob, thank you for stepping up and taking the role. It's been a pleasure working with you. I wish you the best in your role. All the work that you do behind the scenes. It's appreciated. So it's been an honor to serve here and wish the commission the best moving forward. No, I'm driving you to tears, but
Hopefully you'll be able to edit out my talking video. Sorry.
You carried us through what a very new experience for me. I would say that, you know, as I'm coming into this, it's sometimes I'm like, I almost need a pre-meeting. Talk to John, I was like, I need to know kind of like, am I supposed to understand some of these things, or are they just inherent, or are they things I need to just, you know, reach out with question marks? I'm used to board service where we, the executive team will go over everything ahead of time. This is a very different setup, and I'm still trying to play catch up. So I eventually will, you know, actually put my name behind actually bringing some of the things instead of just seconding them, but I'm still learning even that piece of it.
Well, part of the challenge is it's a public body. So we can't have a quorum of us discussing.
Sure, of course.
Particular item that's on the agenda. You can always pose questions to Jacob in advance. Or to any one of us if you have a question by email. Those emails could be subject to.
Sure.
No requests, just so you know. But that's the challenge of being on a public body, is you really have to have your conversation and discussions in public.
That's what I figured, but it also keeps me a little bit on the sidelines, so I apologize if I don't sound like I'm getting very involved. I do care. It's a much matter of like, I do not know where to start with some of these things. I have questions that I'm like looking at things like, is that our jurisdiction or do we get it? And
As an example, the David Miller letter, I mean, the zoning issues are in his letter. We don't normally go through those and address those here.
Right, okay.
And we do address the modifications and waivers, subdivision, land development ordinance, and to some extent the stormwater side. But you'll pick that up as you go through. Yeah. We did talk one time, I don't think it was Tara, I actually think it was Dr. Tara, about having a training session
yes,
for planning commission members, and maybe when Jansen's comes on, that would be a good opportunity to have a session, whether it's an evening before this meeting or after this meeting, or
I'll bring dinner if we need to.
Yeah, I think something before, because there's certain things, especially with this agenda, with all these ordinance changes, just getting familiar with reading through a zoning ordinance, can be a little bit tricky and, again, if all members, if you ever want to come have a meeting in my office, let me know and go over things, you know, but more procedural things, not necessarily like, you know, with the case, or, yeah, questions about a case, absolutely.
Makes sense.
thank you.
Yeah, don't tell the board.
Yeah, thanks for your service too.
yeah, I'm happy to help, but it's a steep learning curve initially, but we still need to adjourn, correct?
We do need to adjourn. That was a part of recognition. It's just
Yeah, sorry.
motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Well, it's final motion, the planning commission members to adjourn the meeting. John seconds. All those in favor say aye. Those so moved. We are adjourned.